Asia is set for strong growth this year. That's according to the Asian Development Bank. The Manila-based bank says economies in Asia and the Pacific are expected to grow by 4.8% this year. And the main factor behind the outlook is China's post-pandemic reopening. It says the world's second largest economy is on track to grow by 5% this year and 4.5% next year.
Well, Dr. Albert Park is chief economist at the bank and oversaw the annual economic outlook report. I asked him about Asia's growth prospects.
The story really is that the region is putting the pandemic behind it and returning back to normal rates of growth. Still not quite as high as before the pandemic, but China was really the last major economy to kind of move away from lockdowns, and obviously it had a zero COVID policy. And our increased forecasts for growth in Asia are mainly driven by China's opening up. So previously we had forecast China to grow at 4.3% this year. Now we're forecasting it to grow at 5% this year. And there's even a chance that it will be even a more robust recovery than that. So we anticipate the possibility of upside risk. India has also been a steady grower recently. There's been very healthy consumption and investment in the past year, and it continues into this year. India is a little bit less exposed to the global downturn in external demand caused by very slow growth in the U.S. and Europe because it doesn't export quite as much as some of the other economies in the region. But it's really the domestic demand story that has been driving growth. It's a young country. They're making a lot of infrastructure investments. They're incentivizing development of the manufacturing sector. So those two countries obviously form the largest part of GDP in the region, and their healthy growth is a big part of the overall region's robust growth projection.
Your optimism is infectious. The cynics and your critics might suggest that Ukraine rumbles on, geopolitical tensions aren't going away. I wonder if this weekend's decision by oil-producing countries to cut oil output might reignite inflationary pressures. You're not tempted to put the report in the shredder just yet?
Right. In fact, the title of our report says "Brightened Outlook Amid Remaining Challenges." And obviously the war in Ukraine, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, if it escalates, will put more pressure on global commodity prices, energy prices, food prices, and that does definitely remain a risk to the outlook. The OPEC decision doesn't help at all. Our baseline forecast was that oil price would be about $88 per barrel this year and $90 next year. That's still a little bit above where we are even after the OPEC decision, but that forecast kind of anticipated that with China's recovery, Chinese consumers would be demanding more energy, and so this would put upward pressure. So it's certainly a risk that if the supply remains constrained either because of OPEC's intentions or because of disruptions or tensions from the war, then that would put pressure on the region, because that would keep inflation concerns really very visible for many countries in the region. It would also increase the cost to consumers as well as producers.
And I'm wondering about the other key risks to Asia's growth, and I'm thinking about the downturn in demand for computer chips that's perhaps damaged the outlook for major exporters like Taiwan, Singapore and South Korea.
Yeah, so suppressed external demand is a drag on growth. If it were more healthier, our growth projections would be even higher. The semiconductor industry is in a secular downturn. We expect by the end of the year it should start to turn around and reverse itself. But for other economies, the ones that are not these major tech exporters, for instance, many of the ASEAN countries, this suppressed external demand is balanced by, again, rising domestic demand driven by recovery from the pandemic. And that's really the source of momentum in our forecast.